It's open. Captain's armband polished and ready. Good, because it's time for our deep dive into Game Week 26. Got some juicy expert analysis to pick apart today, and, well, hopefully it helps you make those tough transfer calls, the ones that can make or break your FPL season.
Yeah, they can be brutal sometimes.
This week, I think the big question is how are we going to squeeze max points out of our squads when so many teams are blanking in Game Week 29?
It's definitely top of mind, that's for sure. You got to think a few steps ahead this time around, especially if you're sitting on those chips still.
Right. Can't just go willy-nilly with those chips.
Nope, timing is everything.
Okay, let's start with Cole Palmer, shall we? This expert says hold, even though his form's dipped a bit lately.
Makes sense with those double game week fixtures coming up, though, right? Southampton and Leicester, come on.
Yeah, tempting for sure, but who are you realistically going to swap him out for? Someone who's actually going to bring in more points even without the double.
That's what I'm wondering. And to be honest, the expert seems a bit stumped, too. I've been looking at the data, and there are a few midfielders with slightly better expected points, even without that double fixture. Got to consider that.
True.
Plus, let's be real, some of us might need to free up some cash for those, big hitters.
Haaland.
Yeah, Haaland, always lurking in the back of our minds and our budgets.
Tell me about it. Okay, moving on. We've got a striker face-off this week. Danny Welbeck versus Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Welbeck's got that delicious Southampton fixture on the horizon, and the expert seems pretty confident he'll start.
Yeah, I mean, Welbeck's minutes have been pretty solid, when he's actually fit, so I wouldn't worry too much about that.
So we can relax on that front. Good.
But here's where things get dicey. Calvert-Lewin, DCL, he's way cheaper, and he's got some decent fixtures coming up, too. Got to factor that in.
Yeah, true. Gotta love that price tag.
Right.
But Everton, well, they can be a bit of a wild card.
Oh, absolutely. Can't argue that. But the big thing is you got to watch out for that fixture swing, because after Game Week 29, Calvert-Lewin's basically walking into a buzzsaw at Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City. Yikes.
Oof, not good.
Nope. So you got to be ready to move him on quick.
Short-term gain, long-term pain.
Pretty much. What do you think?
The classic FPL dilemma. This is why I love and hate this game.
Haha, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Cody Gakpo. He's been out with an injury, and this expert, along with what seems like half the FPL world, is jumping off the bandwagon.
Yeah, I get it. It's hard to argue with that one. Even if Gakpo makes it back for Game Week 26, Jota and Diaz are going to be breathing down his neck for minutes.
For sure.
And with Liverpool's attack finally clicking, it feels risky,
Very risky. So the question is, who are we replacing him with?
Well, the expert suggests Matthias Cunha or Jean-Philippe Mateta. What do you think?
Cunha's got the fixtures, gotta love that, but then Mateta's got that juicy double game week in 32 decisions.
Right. It all comes down to whether you're using your free hit in 29, doesn't it?
I think you're right.
If you're free hitting in 29, Mateta could be a sneaky differential.
I like it.
But then again, Cunha's got that consistency, and that's pretty appealing if you're trying to navigate that blank game week without throwing away points.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about Chris Wood. The guy's been a bit of a revelation this season, racking up the goals.
Right.
But this expert is waving a massive red flag, saying don't even think about bringing him in now. Not with those upcoming fixtures.
Newcastle, Arsenal, Man City, ouch.
Brutal, right.
Yeah, that's a tough run.
And apparently it's not just the fixtures. This expert dug into the underlying stats, and Wood's XG is way lower than his actual goals. So basically he's been punching above his weight, and that's probably not going to last, especially not against those defenses.
Classic case of riding the wave till it crashes.
Tempting, but yeah, I see the risk. What about his teammate, Brennan Johnson? He's been looking pretty sharp lately, too.
Yeah, he has. On fire, actually. But that Liverpool matchup this week is a tough one. Plus, we don't know when Morgan Gibbs-White's coming back from injury. Could mean fewer minutes for Johnson.
Yeah, good point. So maybe hold off for now, see how things shake out.
Exactly.
Okay, last one for this part. Let's talk about Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. He's been a popular pick, but this expert is saying pump the brakes. Apparently that early season form was a bit of a mirage.
Yeah, his underlying stats suggest he was overachieving, and his recent performances seem to back that up. He's still nailed on to start, though, and he's got some decent fixtures coming up.
True, but is that enough to outweigh that dip in form? Feels like a bit of a gamble.
It is definitely a gamble, but hey, sometimes a gamble pays off, especially if you're looking for a differential.
That's the FPL spirit right there. All right, gotta pause it there. We've covered a lot of ground already. Feels like we've laid a pretty solid foundation for Game Week 26, though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure, but we've got plenty more to dissect. We'll be right back with part 2, where we'll dive into even more players and figure out how to use those chips strategically to navigate this tricky period.
Back again, ready for round 2. More players to dissect.
Oh yeah, plenty more to talk about.
All right, so we were chatting about Lewis Hall earlier. A lot of folks jumping ship after that Man City thumping, but I think you were saying it might be a bit hasty to write him off just yet.
Yeah, I mean, that game was rough, no doubt, but Hall's still pretty dangerous going forward. And those fixtures leading up to that blank game week, they're not terrible.
Yeah, you've got a point there.
It boils down to your strategy, though, right?
Right, like if you're planning on using your free hit in 29, maybe you just stick with Hall and see what happens.
Yeah, write it out.
But if you're trying to set your team up for the long haul, then it's a different story.
Completely different, yeah. And speaking of long-term planning, we got to talk about Daniel Iverson again.
Oh yeah, the experts still kicking themselves over selling him, huh?
Basically begging for forgiveness.
Uh-huh. I can see why, though. The guy's been a clean sheet magnet.
Right. If you held on to him, you're probably sitting pretty right now.
Probably top of their mini league, laughing at the rest of us.
Probably. He's a great example of why sometimes it's better to just stick with those solid performers, instead of chasing the shiny new toys.
Very true. Very true. Although if you're free hitting in 29, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Nope, not at all. But for those of us trying to navigate that blank game week without burning a chip, Iverson could be a lifesaver.
Absolutely, he could be the difference maker. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the popular picks, the ones everyone's stressing over, but what about some differentials?
Ooh, you want to get sneaky?
You know, those under-the-radar players that can give you an edge in your mini league?
I like it. I like it. Well, the expert has a few interesting names. One that jumps out is Alex Iwobi.
Iwobi, okay.
Yeah, he's listed as a midfielder in FPL, but he's been playing further forward for Everton lately.
Ooh, I love that when players blur those positional lines.
Right, it adds another layer of strategy.
So is Iwobi worth a punt then?
I think he could be. Everton's fixtures are looking pretty decent, and if he keeps getting those attacking returns, he could be a real steal.
Bargain basement prices?
Exactly. Who else we got?
Yeah, who else is on that differentials radar?
Manor Solomon's been in red-hot form for Fulham recently. Goals in 3 of his last 4. That's got to mean something.
Solomon, okay, I like the sound of that, but what about Fulham's form in general? They've been a bit up and down, haven't they?
They have, yeah, a bit inconsistent, but their attack has been pretty reliable, and Solomon seems to be a big part of that. Plus, his ownership is still pretty low, so he could be a real difference maker.
If he keeps scoring like this, that ownership's going to shoot up real long.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Any other hidden gems we should be looking at?
Yeah, let's hear it.
One more, Pedro Porro, the new Tottenham signing.
Porro, okay.
He loves to bomb forward, and his set-piece delivery is, well, it's a thing of beauty.
Okay, gotta watch out for that then. And Spurs have been scoring for fun lately, so Porro could be racking up the assists, maybe even bag a goal or two himself.
Exactly. He's a bit of a risk, obviously, being a new signing and all, but at his price, he could be a real bargain.
All right, so we've got Iwobi, Solomon, and Porro as potential differentials, players who could really shake things up in your mini league. But let's zoom out for a second, talk big picture, chip strategy. I mean, with that blank game week in 29, knowing when and how to use those chips is absolutely crucial, wouldn't you say?
Oh, 100%. This expert really stresses the importance of planning ahead. You got to think about which game weeks offer the best opportunities to maximize your chips and how those decisions fit with your overall team structure and your transfer plans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like if you're planning on using your wild card soon, it makes sense to hold on to players who have good fixtures in the weeks leading up to your wild card, even if they blank in 29.
Right, exactly. It's all about squeezing every bit of value out of your squad, making sure your chips are working in tandem with your transfers.
So it's like a symphony, everything working together in perfect harmony.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And the same logic applies to the bench boost and the triple captain, right? You want to use those in a game week where your chosen players have the best chance of, well, going absolutely ballistic.
Absolutely. Picking your moments, making those chips count.
Okay, so we've covered player picks, differentials, chip strategy. What about the captaincy? I mean, that's the decision that can make or break your game week.
For sure, this expert says it's all about finding that balance between form, fixtures, and underlying stats. It's not just about slapping the armband on the biggest name or the most expensive player.
Yeah, sometimes you got to take a chance, Roll the dice on a differential captain, especially if they've got a juicy fixture and they're in red-hot form.
Exactly. Got to trust your gut. Go with the player you think is going to deliver the points.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground here. Feels like we've built a pretty solid game plan for game week 26, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think we're in good shape, but there's one more crucial piece of the FPL puzzle we need to talk about.
Oh, and what's that?
The chaos factor.
The chaos factor.
The injuries, the suspensions, the surprise results, those last-minute decisions from the managers, all that stuff, you just can't predict.
Oh, yeah, that's the beauty of it, right? The unpredictability.
Well, it's what makes it so frustrating. It's so addictive. You can plan and strategize all you want, but sometimes it just comes down to dumb luck.
Sometimes you just got to throw your hands up and say, whatever the FPL gods decide.
Pretty much the best FPL managers, though, they're the ones who can adapt to those unexpected twists and turns, the ones who stay calm, make smart decisions, and keep their eyes on the prize.
Yeah, easier said than done when your captain blanks and your star player gets injured in the first minute. But I hear you, flexibility and resilience, those are key.
Couldn't agree more. We'll be back in a bit with part 3, where we'll wrap up this whole deep dive and leave you with some final thoughts to chew on as you lock in those Game Week 26 plans.
Okay, we're back. Final part of our Game Week 26 deep dive. We've talked about players, differentials, those all-important chips. But before we let you loose on the FPL world, gotta address one last thing.
The big question, right?
Yeah, are there any players you would actually consider essential? The ones you just can't go without, no matter what your chip strategy is, what your team looks like?
That's a tough one.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, because the FPL, I feel like that whole idea of essential, it's always changing.
Right. What's essential one week might be dead weight the next.
Exactly. So what about you? Do you believe in essential players?
I don't know. It's tricky. There are definitely players who offer like insane value and they're super consistent, but I think it's dangerous to get too attached to any player no matter how good they are.
I agree. You can't get tunnel vision.
Yeah, the beauty of FPL is that there's always someone else waiting in the wings, ready to take over.
Always someone ready to steal the show.
So true. So as we head into that Game Week 26 deadline, what's your parting wisdom? What should our listeners keep in mind?
Don't get caught up in the hype, all the noise. Just do your research, trust your gut, and most importantly, have fun with it. Because at the end of the day, it's just a game.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. All right, that about wraps up our deep dive into Game Week 26. Covered a lot, but as always, there's even more to explore, more to analyze.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of the fun.
Right. And remember, the best FPL managers out there, they're the ones who are always learning, always adapting, always tweaking their strategies.
So keep at it. Keep experimenting. Keep digging into those stats. And most importantly, keep chasing those green arrows.
That's what it's all about. Good luck out there, everyone. May your captains haul and your ranks soar. Until next time.